Hi guys, welcome back to another iPhone tutorial. This one is going to be a bit different. It's going to keep going with the web services tutorials, but it's going to be a bit different to the previous two or three I've done. With the other few in JSON, it was a case of getting data from a external source and turning it into useful information on the GUI side and the operational side of the phone. This time, we're going to be putting data somewhere and then retrieving it. So this is going to be using SQL, not SQLite. This is using actual SQL. And it's going to be using, but you never want to connect a phone or a device directly to a database. You never want to even do it from a website. You always have to have an intermediary to deal with the traffic to and from. In this case, it's going to be take an input from the phone, going to a PHP file, and from the PHP file into an SQL database. And then later on, we'll be sending a request through the phone to another SQL script to the database, which will return all our results in rows in JSON format, and we're going to parse those back into a table view. So it's going to be three parts. This is going to be the setup with the database and the first script. The second part will be the phone and posting to the database, and the third part will be the return script and returning all our rows to the phone. So unfortunately, I can't put the code for the table for the SQL database up online because it's going to be local hosted, and if I made it a public one, it'd be very hard for them to check, and someone probably would wreck it on me. So it's going to be locally hosted, but I'll show you exactly how to do it. First things first is you download a thing called XAMPP. Just literally Google that and download the one for Mac OS X. It takes about 2 seconds to download and install. It's really simple, very easy, and you'll get this window coming up, and it tells you everything. You know, it's going to be on localhost, and then root and no password by default. I'm going to change this after I make the video, so you can't hack into my database, but yours should be a standard this. And you want to start Apache and MySQL. Now this isn't a tutorial on SQL or PHP. There's plenty out there, and I couldn't do both in one tutorial even if I wanted to, but I'll explain as best I can as I'm going through this. So once you've got this run, go to your browser and just type in localhost. So it's http localhost/xmpp and enter, and you'll be given this screen, okay? Now you want to go down to the bottom, Tools, My PHP Admin. Click, and you get this, okay? If you're new to all this, don't worry, and explain what we're doing. On the left, you'll see a few of my mess databases, the ones I've made for different things and tests. A few you'll have by default, like Schema and MySQL. Don't bother going near those. We're going to make a brand new one now, okay? And we're going to call it TestDB. And create. Okay. The name of inside a database you have tables. I could have 100 tables in here. We're going to call this one test. Number of fields 3, and go. Okay, so now you'll be here. So field 1 is going to be ID. If you've never used SQL before, you need to have a primary key, a way of indexing all your results. So if you try and return this without an index, well, it probably won't insert without an index. It will. It'll need a primary key, but it won't work too well. But you want a way of, numbering 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. Just return all the results. Never mind specific results. For this, it's going to be an ID. So it's going to be an int. Length values 20, doesn't really matter. Default correlation over attributes null. It's never going to be null. Well, sometimes it will, but not in this case. Index primary. And auto increment, so it's going to automatically update as we use it. Second one is going to be name. It's going to be a varchar length value. Let's make it 30, and that's all we need for that one. Next is going to be message. It's going to be text, and length, make it just 100, nice and short. Okay, that's it. That's our database essentially set up. Our ID, integer, name, varchar, and message is text. And save. There you go. You should get a successful. So that's just SQL query. We will be doing SQL query in the actual PHP file, but that's next. Okay, search database set up. Now we need to make a text file. Okay, for this we have to let this know that it's a PHP file. So the very first thing you do is bracket question mark PHP. Okay, so if you've ever looked, an example of PHP will be like Facebook. It's a mostly PHP file. A lot of the scripts are in PHP and JavaScript, but PHP is generally invisible to the user. If I had this in the middle of middle of HTML, you probably wouldn't see it unless it's been accessed or directly run. This is simply a script by itself. We're going to save this PHP file. So this will run the second we make a connection to it. So we have to set up a few things. So as you saw in that database, we had two fields, three, but don't worry about the first one for a moment. First of all is the name. So this is the syntax for PHP. So name equals. Sorry, we're not at that yet. We need to set up our database first. So username equals root. As you saw earlier, my username is root. I've got no password, so don't even make a password entry. Then we also have to do, where's that button gone to? $, database equals new DB. I think I called it. If I called something else, I'm an idiot. Test DB, that would have been very embarrassing for me. Test DB, okay. Now, those are set up, okay, but we have to do a connection to this now. So, my SQL connect, this is a built-in command to PHP, local host. So we're hosting on localhost. So if this was a internet database, you'd have to enter the URL or with the place it's hosted, and then user name, which is root. If you get a password, you do comma password and enter whatever your password is, but we don't have a password, so we leave it blank. Now, at my SQL select DB. If you wonder why this is all still not colored, it's because I haven't saved the file as a PHP file yet. Don't worry. MySQL select DB database or die. This is basically an error checking tool. Unable to find database. And close. So if it can't select database, so if I had called that new DB instead of the actual name, it will come back and say it can't find database, doesn't exist. So that's just an error checker to let you know when you're testing. Now we have to retrieve two values from our we have to set up our message handling now. Okay, so we have two variables. We have name. Don't even understand what this means now. Get. So we want to get the values for these two operations. Name and message equals, same as before, get square brackets message. Okay, now those are our two things we're sending. You may be wondering, but we have a third field. That's what's going to be next. So now we have to make the query. So we've set up our connection. We've set up our, we've told it to select the database. We're these. So we're now in the database, and we're now getting our input for these two things. So we need a query to handle all this and to handle our final operation. So it's $$ query. The name is irrelevant. These names are irrelevant. They're just the same as calling a variable anything you want. Equals. This is an SQL syntax. If you don't know SQL, you don't really have to know this, but it's handy to go off and do a few quick tutorials on this. But this is how it actually puts the values we've taken from our post command into the database. So it's insert into test. Tests our table. So we're inserting these values into the test table inside the testdb database into test values, and these capitals are very important. Okay, now this is our actual query. Now I have two empty marks there because we're passing in an empty variable because we've set that variable to be auto increment in the database. Then we have $name, close, Same for message, and then bracket and close. Okay. Now, so that's a query done. Now to actually execute the query. So it's my SQL, that's about right. Query, $sign query. No, it's not $sign. It's $sign. $sign query. Or die my SQL error, and just give it a little name, error, but it doesn't really matter, and 1 bracket, 2 brackets, and close. Then my SQL close the connection, I want to stay open, empty, and then end your PHP script. Okay. Now, also, if you've read the little document that opened there when you started up XMPP, this only knows these files are in the local host directory if they're saved into a file in XMPP called htdocs. So you have to save it in there. Now, so save. I'm going to call it tutorial test.php. I'm going to save it in htdocs. Make sure you have the PHP extension and save. And if you have a Mac like I do, it will cost. Okay, now you see it's all highlighted. Now we have to test this. Okay, so up here, open this up, and new window. So localhost and tutorial test.php, and enter. Okay, if you get nothing, it means it's working, because PHP scripts are generally invisible to the user. If you've got an error, it tells you what line the error is on. Go back in and find it and erase it. Okay, leave it there. That's our back-end setup and our post script setup. Now I'm going to make the next bit for the iPhone part, and that's going to be part 2 of the tutorial. So join back and we'll do some posting, and hopefully if it works we will see entries going from the phone into your database. Alright folks, hope this was helpful. Join again soon for part 2 and 3. See you soon, bye.